Hello, I'm Paul Race and welcome to my workshop. Today's video is going to be a little bit unusual because I actually started it back in warm weather. You'll see me wearing a short sleeve shirt in a minute. Right now it's in January. It's only about 40 degrees in my workshop, but I wanted to finish this video and I wanted to get this particular auto harp off of my workbench. I started a project last fall because we were throwing together a string band and a woman wanted to play auto harp, and I said standard Oscar Schmidt OS21s don't have all the chords that we need for the string bands because they're just not made for that. I wanted to have an E chord, an F sharp minor chord, and a B minor chord. This is a very common conversion. A lot of auto harpers do it, especially if they're going to be playing bluegrass or country or folk music. So it's a common conversion. I've done it before on other auto harps, and I started it on this one, and I thought I would take a shortcut. The shortcut didn't work. So what you're going to see in a minute is I start and I explain what I'm trying to do, and then I get into it, and then it's going to stop, and then I'm going to explain some more things. So I hope you'll get the idea that none of this is rocket science, but it also doesn't take a rocket scientist to do these projects. It's just sometimes things don't work out exactly the way you think they will. So stay tuned, and you'll see a project that could have gone south, but there are 2 or 3 ways to do what I wanted to do, and I'm just had to change course in midstream. This auto harp that I'm working on is going to be going to somebody on Monday probably, and it's going to be a loaner. This is an OS21 that was made in America, so it's a very solid auto harp, and actually the strings are not bad. Obviously, I'm not going to, this is as a loaner, I'm not going to replace all the strings for them before I loan it out. That would be a little silly. But one of the things that I discovered when I started to work on it was that the keys have been changed around to an entirely different setup than you usually get on one of these. So somebody played this to death, but they moved the keys around, moved the chords around, and played it in a little bit different way than most normal people do. Well, I also play auto harp a little different way than most normal people do, and I'm actually going to change it so that it works the best for me, and that way I'll feel better about the person that I'm loaning it to. One thing about auto harps, even the OS21s, the 21 chord versions, is they don't have the chords you need to play bluegrass or mountain music or folk music or a lot of other kinds of music. Even most country music requires chords that the average auto harp doesn't have. And the fix for that is very easy and a little complicated. You can buy new chord bars that go on the thing. So for instance, this is going to be, this is an F sharp minor chord bar. And see, if I put it here, that should give you an idea of what the F sharp minor would sound like if I strummed it. I don't know if I've got it lined up right. Yep, I have an F sharp minor. F sharp minor is used in a lot of folk music, and it's also used if you're playing a bluegrass song in the key of A. You're likely to use it. B minor is another chord bar that I'm going to be putting on. B minor is used a lot in the key of D and somewhat in the key of G. And the biggie is E major. Now, why you have so many chords on a 21 chord auto harp but not an E major has always been a mystery to me. You have E minor and you have E7, but you don't have an E major. I may even have to look on this to make sure this even has an E minor, but it does. Everything's been moved around so much. So my task will be to open this up by loosening the screws that are here and here, taking this part off very, very carefully, and moving these chord bars around and removing the ones that I won't be using. So I'm going to turn it around this way because it's easier for me if I can see the chord names. So there's a little screw here. Let's see, it's a Phillips on this one. It isn't always. Every time Oscar Schmidt changed factories, the specs changed along with them. Let me get my little these screwdriver sets have miniature screwdrivers and so on that you see. They're easily available. My grocery store, my Kroger store sells them, in fact. So people are like, I don't have the right screwdriver to work on my auto harp. Well, if you can buy tomato paste, you can buy the screwdrivers that you need to work on your auto harp. Now, one of the things that you don't want to do is lose these little screws, because as I said, if you get the screws from a made in America one, and then you're trying to work on a made in Korea one or made in China one, you might discover that they don't have the same tap. That's sad but true. And the other thing that differs, besides the occasional little bits of hardware not being the same, the other thing that differs is that the string distances aren't always consistent from one factory to the next. So in this case, I ordered these chord bars from Elderly Music, which is in Michigan, and they sell a lot of parts for auto harps. You can also get them sometimes from the Auto Harp store, and you can get them from Daigle, which is DAIGLE.com, which is the, or maybe it's DaigleHarps.com. Pete Daigle sells a lot of auto harp parts. And one of the parts that's highest in demand is these replacement chord bars. In fact, there was at least one 21 chorder, the first 21 chord Appalachians of Oscar Schmidt OS45s. When they went to 21 chords, they actually included a free E chord bar with it in case you wanted to do some work. Now, here's the fun part. When you raise this chord bar cover off, all the little buttons are going to want to come with you. And if you're not careful, so what I like to do is I like to push the buttons down. The thing is, they're completely unattached. Okay. So I raise the chord bar cover off. Now this is interesting because this particular one actually has the foam that's supposed to deaden the chord bars when they come popping up after you press the strings. Most auto harps this age, the foam is completely shot or missing altogether. So actually this tells me that this was stored better than the average auto harp. Ordinarily, when you convert one of these to a folk-friendly key layout, you can go systematically and moving them across. The chords are, if you see the chord bars, are sitting on little springs, and on this end, there's a little slot in each end of the chord bar that sits over this little piece, this little plastic post. This is called the comb. It's a one-piece plastic, some sort of nylon usually, and it's one of the most common failing points on a 21 chord auto harp. If they're handled correctly, it'll last for a generation, but if it's dropped in shipment, the pressure of all these aluminum chord bars bouncing at once will sometimes shatter all these little posts. The other end doesn't have the little slots on. It has little holes. As you can see, there's a little hole on one end. So when you're lining these up, one of the things that you don't want to do is put them in backwards, because you can. I don't think I would do that on purpose, but people do it accidentally all the time. Because these are out of the sequence they would normally be in, I will have to take a little more time as I move them around to make sure I'm getting rid of the keys, the chords that I don't want, and keeping the chords that I do. One chord that I will never use is A flat. Now, as I pick up the A flat chord bar, I have to be extremely careful not to let the springs jump up with it. Sometimes they'll stick to the chord bar and they'll just jump out, they'll fall off just as you get it picked up, and they'll disappear. Never disassemble your auto harp over shag carpet. Okay, this is the A flat chord bar. You'll notice that the color of the felt is different. I don't think anybody will notice that because you can't really see them once it's reassembled. And something else to notice is that these chord bar indicators are not permanently attached to the chord bars. So when you move the chord bars around, you have to also be careful to not let them get disassociated. Now, if you look at this chord bar, it doesn't tell you what the chord is. Now, if I was starting from scratch and I came across this, I would have to line it up here and play it to try to figure out what chord that is. That said, whenever you move chord bars on an auto harp, take a fine point magic marker and write the name of the chord on the side. Again, nobody will ever see it, but that way you won't be lost in a state of confusion when you go to putting this back together. This is an interesting variant because the labels, the little buttons, are actually pretty well attached to the. I'm going to pull B flat. I'm going to pull F7 out right now. That's probably one I'm not going to use. So I'll go ahead and mark it and lay it aside with my A flat. Usually these just slide around. On this particular one, they're in there pretty tight. So it's not going to be a question of just sliding them around when I get it back in place. This is E flat. I may or may not keep this. Some people keep the E flat, and some people change it out for something else. Way to wrap this program. I had to put this project on hold for a little bit, but for a number of reasons. But the main reason was that something I was counting on and something that I told you about earlier in this presentation was actually wrong. This is an Oscar Schmidt OS21. It's a 21 chord Oscar Schmidt auto harp that was probably made in the early 70s. And one of the important things about it is it was made in the United States. So it's actually a very solid instrument. Much better than the instruments that have been made by Oscar Schmidt in the last 15 years. In fact, even though it has the original strings, it still sounds good. And I'm very pleased with it overall. Another thing about it is that this piece here, which is called the anchor bar, holds the ends of the strings down. On the newer ones, the anchor bar isn't set in quite right, and it kind of eases out, and eventually it will destroy the face of the instrument on some of these. In this case, you see this little flat part of the anchor bar is actually flat against the face of the instrument. The advantage of that is it lets you know that if it's been there for 50 years, it's probably going to stay there. Especially, like I said, this instrument's been tuned for several months, and showing no sign of the anchor bar going anywhere. So that's a good thing. And I wanted to point that out. Probably made in the early 70s. Was not entirely sure. That they didn't always put the dates on these. It also says made in USA. And we know that they started building these about 69, and that they later on moved the construction of them to Korea and then eventually to China. They may have been in Japan for a little while, or some of the models may have been made in Japan. I'm not sure about the OS21s. The OS21s today are still being made in Asia, but they're not being made with the same attention to quality that these were. When I ordered new chord bars, because I didn't want A flat, I didn't want B flat 7, and I didn't really need F7. When I ordered new chord bars, I ordered E, I ordered B minor, and I ordered F sharp minor. Those are all chords that are commonly used in folk music and that I use all the time. As an example, the city of New Orleans uses those chords, and I play that all the time. And I'm not always playing guitar. Sometimes I get stuck on playing other instruments because everybody plays guitar, so I want to play something that's not just 11 guitar players standing here. So okay, I pick up an auto harp. I want to play City of New Orleans on it. I need those chords. A lot of other folk songs use those chords, and as a result, many auto harp owners, especially OS21 owners, have taken off the A flat and the B flat 7, and sometimes the C minor, and they said, okay, I don't need those chords because I never play in those keys. I'm going to get the chords I use: E major, B minor, and F sharp minor. So an easy way to do that is to go to Elderly Music and some other providers and to order new chord bars that are already set up for those chords. So here's the F sharp minor. Here's the E chord bar. It's hard to tell because it's written there. Felts are a different color. Doesn't really matter. This is the old B flat 7th chord bar, which I took off because I don't need B flat 7. Here is the F7 chord bar, which I took off because I don't need F7. A lot of people keep F7 and take C minor off, but I'm actually more likely to use C minor than I am to ever use F7. And the other chord bar that I took off, because I'll never need it, and this is the one everybody takes off, is the A flat chord bar. Now you notice that I have labeled these. When they come on, when you get the instrument, these are not likely to be labeled. So whenever you disassemble an OS21, be sure to have a marker on hand and mark the chord bars as you take them out. So once I had moved the other thing I did is I moved the buttons, moved the chords around so that they were in relative positions that were easier for me to play. It's called the Bowers setup, and I'm going to show a picture of it right now of the before and after. The first picture is going to be the before of the standard OS21 setup, and the second one is going to be a picture of what they call the Bowers setup, which is more folk friendly. It's basically easier for people who play music along with acoustic instruments. Music in C, G, D, A, and even E will have access to the chords they need in the Bowers setup. I moved these chords around. As you move the chords around, you also wind up having to rearrange the buttons because the buttons don't stay where you think they should. And in fact, you may have a button here, and it may need, after you've moved the chords around to go properly, you may need to have it up here. That's not a problem as long as you have your chord bars numbered. So I did all that. I moved everything around. I had all the chord bars numbered. I put the new chord bars clearly labeled from Elderly Music, and I'm not necessarily slamming Elderly Music because you can order these from a number of people, but I put the new Elderly Music chord bars in, and it turned out that so much has changed since this auto harp was built that what should have been an E chord on this, as I put it on, is actually an F chord. On the newer auto harp seems to have shifted over, and as a result, all of these are in the wrong place. They're all 3/4 of an inch off. And that's true of all three chord bars that I ordered from Elderly Music. Not only that, but I ordered an extra set, and the other set has is set up the same way. So these chord bars, which would probably work on a new auto harp, do not work on this auto harp. So what I have to do now is I have to go back to my A flat, to the chord bars I'm not using, the A flat, the B flat 7th, and the F 7th, and cut all of these off. I'm never going to use these anyway, so I'm going to have to go back and chop all of these off. Some of them are coming off on their own anyway. There's a blank place here where there ought to be chords, ought to be some belts. So I'm going to take a sharp knife and cut them off, and then I'm going to glue gun and see if it works to remove the glue, and then I'm going to take a felt strip that I've ordered that comes with a little bit of sticky on the back and set it on here, and then I'm going to cut the new chord bars so that they play the right chords. So I'll show you a few of those steps as they come along, but in the meantime, I'm going to be carving these things up with a utility knife. So I'll catch you later. This is a chord bar from a 15 quarter. It's a modern 15 quarter. It's aluminum. The old 15 quarters had wood chord bars. The newer ones are aluminum and often have a piece of plastic that sits on the top. This is from a 15 quarter, and this is the chord bar. Let me grab this one that still has the felts on it. This is a chord bar from a 21 quarter, and the difference in these, which you may or may not be able to see, and so you can't use these on here even if they had the right holes or whatever. I mentioned earlier getting a felt strip. I have ordered several of these because they're real easy to, once you've got the chord bars cleaned up, they're real easy to stick on here and make work. But there's one thing that you kind of need to know, and that is that on the 21 chord instruments, the felt doesn't go all the way in. So you'll need to notch off the felt on the end. Here's an example of a chord bar from a 15 chord auto harp, and you'll see that the felt goes all the way to the end. So when you order felt strips, often you'll get felt that goes all the way to the end, even if you order the correct felt strips for a 21 quarter, which I did. So these felt strips, they're only a few dollars. In fact, you can order, often you can order chord bars that have the felt that have uncut felt strips already attached. And I'm not going to order another set of chord bars, so I'm just going to reuse this one because I'm never going to use that A-flat chord bar again. So I'm going to just use the felt strip on here. So I have yet to clean these off. That's a chemical process. It takes a bit of scrubbing and nasty smelling stuff. And when I do, I will put my felt strips on them, and then I will come back and show you the rest of the process. Something that would not have been necessary if the chord bars I bought from Elderly were set up for this harp instead of for harps made 30, 40 years later. Now, to be honest, Elderly used to claim that you should not order them unless you were absolutely certain because of exactly that problem. The fact is that the tolerances have changed over the years. Every few years, they had to completely retool these because the jigs and the tooling would wear out. And every time they retool them, something would change slightly. And so as a result, what would have been an E chord is now an F chord just because everything has shifted over 3/16 of an inch since this machine was built. So I will be back when I have the old chord bars cleaned off and the felt applied, and then I can show you where you go from there. Hello, I'm back. I have my newly defelted chord bars. These are the chord bars that came off of this instrument, so I know they'll go back on. So I have the old B-flat-7 chord bar, the old A-flat chord bar, and I have the old F7 chord bar, which I will be, all three of these I'll be refelting, and I'll show you how to do that momentarily. Why do I have F7 here? A lot of people will take C minor off and leave F7 because if they're playing in B flat, they want to be able to get that F7 in there. Well, I don't play in B flat very often, but I know some banjo players, old-time banjo players, who will occasionally play certain songs in C minor. So I left the C minor on here and took off the F7. You have a choice, of course, of what you want to leave and what you want to take off, but these are the three I'm dealing with. I wanted to show you, I have the felt right here, and this comes in a strip with stickum on it, and it has to be applied, obviously, but it can't be applied all the way to the ends because the ends of OS21 chord bars have to be open. Here's an example. It's a B7 chord bar, and the ends are open because these little guys sit right on the springs. They don't have a extra bit of felt on the ends the way the chord bars for the 15 chord machines do. That said, when I put this on, I'm going to start it in just a little bit. I can't use this as an example because it has it's open there for a C to play. But when I put this on, I'm going to decide which chord bar this is going to be. I think I'll make this one the B minor because it's the one that needs to go on first. Actually, I'll take the B flat chord bar and I'll make it B minor. B minor. It doesn't really matter which one I do because right now it can be any chord they want to be. So I will start this in just a little, just far enough so it can sit on the comb. Let me start it there just for the fun of it. It's bitterly cold, by the way, and it's going to get colder. I'm working in my pretty much unheated workshop. So it looks to me like as long as I keep the felt, cut the felt off about there, and I cut it off about here, I'll be fine. I'll have all kinds of room there. So that's what I'm going to do. I will, so I'll start the felt about here, and I'll cut it off about there, and that'll be about the right amount. Let's see. I haven't used this particular brand of felt before, so let's see how well it works and how sticky it is. Little piece of scrap. I almost threw it on the table, but on my workbench. But as you can tell, I've got too much scrap on my workbench anyway from cleaning those old felts off. Okay, so I'm now attaching it on one end, pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, and then on the other end, I'm going to take my trusty utility knife and cut it off right there. So that's a piece of felt that I won't be needing. Let me set it on here and see if there's, I think that's too close. That's too close to that little slot. I want to take a little more off. Let's try this. This the hole on this end seems to have gotten a little rough. I don't know how, but I think it was probably just not done smoothly in the factory when it's done in the first place. Okay, so now I have the felt. Okay, on this end is okay, it's deadening there. The felt on the other end is still hanging on the comb just a little bit. Can you see that? So I need to take that off. I should have measured more precisely before I started this. Oh, something else. A spring has gone AWOL on me there. So I'll dig that one up. I've got a lot of spares because I had to dismember one of these not long ago. He's still hanging up. Some people make a point of putting super glue, just a little dab of super glue at the base of each spring, and that way they don't do that. I haven't done that on this one yet. Oh, that is crazy. Okay, I think that will do it. Let me put on one with a spring on it and see for sure. Yeah, I've got good movement there. Now the next thing I have to do is to mark this where the chords should be. Now I've got a little chart that I always include the links to on these videos, so I will do that. But in the meantime, just for the fun of it, I'm going to do the Paul Race version, which is, this is going to be a B minor. So I go find the notes that are in the B minor chord. As an example, F sharp minor is in the B minor chord. Now D minor is 2. I may or may not use that. It is so low in the range that it can make the sound muddy if I'm not careful. So I'm going to get the F sharp. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to catch this B. And then I'm going to go up here. I'm going to catch the D, because that D is in the chord and belongs in the chord. And then I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to catch the next F sharp. And then I'm going to go up and catch the next B. If I really want to be cool, I could catch an A up here too, and I have a B minor 7th, but I'm not going to do that this time. Okay, so down here I'm going to catch the next D, and then I'm going to catch the next F sharp, which is here. And then I'm going to catch the next B, which is almost at the top. So let me sit back and see if it looks like I've got them about where they need to be. B, D, F sharp, B. Okay, do you see that? So the lowest note I have on here, because there's not a low B, the lowest note I have on here is an F sharp. And once again, there is a D in a B minor chord, and I use the Ds further up. But the issue with that is that the potential issue with that is that low D can produce overtones that you will hear and make this. You won't really hear the individual overtones, but you'll hear a muddy effect. So now you see, I very carefully make sure I've got it turned the right way. The hole goes on this end, the slot goes on this end, because if you cut them backwards, then you've just got to start all over again. So now I take my little utility knife and I cut a V every place there's one of these lines. I don't need to really I need to sharpen my blade, but we're going to use the one. I need to put on a sharp blade, I should say, but we're going to use the blade I have here. So just for the fun of it, I'll put this on here and play that low F sharp. There it is. So by notching, instead of cutting the little squares, the problem with cutting the little squares is that there's only then so much room that it has to attach. Whereas if you notch it, it's just the whole bar, the whole felt stays in place. Okay, I'm going to take the next one, which should be a B, and notch it there. Now, if you get the notch too shallow, it won't sound quite right. If you get it too wide, you may have to go back with a little bit of glue and glue a little bit of felt back in place, because you've accidentally made it so that the next string sounds. And I have done that more than once. I have a whole video on doing this on a different auto harp. Okay, so I've got B and F. The next one's going to be D, which right now is silenced. Now this little piece of felt here cost me, I don't know, $4 or $5. So if I totally destroy it, I'm only out $4 or $5. I'm going to do two at a time. I'm getting brave here. I'm going to do two of these. See my little notches coming in? Now that might be too narrow. Let's go see. You don't want it so narrow that it's actually obscuring the note it's supposed to sound. And you also don't want it so wide that it's letting a note beside it play. So I've got F sharp, B, D, F sharp, as far as I've gone so far. So that's a good start on a B minor chord, wouldn't you say? Okay, I got a couple more notches to make. I hope you're seeing this clearly. It's actually a pretty fun thing to do once you've done a few of them and you've kind of got some confidence. Okay. After a while, my workbench looks like I've been invaded by tiny black triangles, which are scary little things if you don't know where they came from. Oops, I made that one kind of wide. Do you see that? That one might pick up the A underneath the B, or the B flat. Worse than that, it'll pick up the B flat. Okay, going back on here. Yeah, see what I did? I picked up the B flat. So I'm going to cut the last one off. I'll put this back on, cut the last one off. And then I'm going to glue a little dab of felt in there to silence that B flat. Make sure I'm getting the right one here when I cut this off. Okay, I need a notch right there. So I should get a high B now. Whoops. Hold on one end, slot on the other. If you put them in backwards, they'll still work. They just won't play the chord you think you're going to get. Well, I still don't have. Here it is. If I had that low D, it would work, but it would muddy the sound. So now I need to go back here and get just a little more felt on this corner here. Hang on here. Be sure I got in the right place. I'm sorry, it's not a low, it's not a B flat that's sounding. It's an F that's sounding. The F sharp. The F is right below the F sharp, and you just see that particular divot is just a little bit more shallow than it ought to be. Well, I'm not going to bother keeping you on here while I do the rest of these, or while I fix that. I've got a little dab of glue. I'm going to find a little bit of felt and glue in there so that it deadens that F, and I will be back eventually. Hello, I'm back. The other two chord bars have been cut. This is the E major chord bar. I have made all the appropriate marks and indentations in the felts. I had to confess that on the F sharp minor chord bar, I made any number of mistakes, but it was not a big problem to find little dabs of felt and glue in the places that I didn't mean to cut out. It just got a little confused on a couple points. That's my bad. At any rate, I've got the F sharp minor already in here. This is F sharp minor. That's a new chord. And the B minor is a new chord. And the E is the last of the new chords, the E major. I've dropped him in here. And by the way, I found that spring that had popped out. It had just was just laying on top of the auto harp. There's E major. And the last one I have to install is the old B7 chord, which has been out of place because I've been using this end of the auto harp to test the other chord bars. Now I'll point out that the F sharp, it's not going to focus on it. I'll point out that the F sharp minor button, the E major button, and the B minor button were all ordered from probably Elderly Music, but several companies have sold them off and on. So now I have the buttons more or less arranged the way they need to go. Now you'll remember that they slide around. So that's one of the issues with working on something like this. As I attempt to put the chord bar cover on, it has to go on a certain way, obviously. And right now, all the buttons are, do I have it? I can never tell if these are actually, if this can actually either go on either way. I think all the buttons have just slid around so much while I was doing this that they're completely out of whack. So I'm going to take a little while to slide the buttons down where they belong. Usually I can get them close, but I've worked on this one more than I expected to, and I've gotten the buttons all slid around out of where they ordinarily would be sitting. So let me see how this is going. So you get the buttons where they belong. If you get them close, sometimes you can nudge them. Some people like to take a pencil eraser and nudge them because it theoretically doesn't damage the face of the buttons. In my case, I'm just going to keep nudging them until I get them close enough. And then I have a tiny, tiny screwdriver that I can usually use to pop them into place. So I'll be back when I have the buttons set up so I can put the cover back on. Hello and welcome back. I have nudged all the buttons around to where they are, where they need to be. Before screwing the chord bar cover back on, I check every button to make sure it's rising and falling as it should. And I also check literally every chord to make sure it's playing the right chord. That's E flat, C minor, C7, G7, and so on. I have gone all the way across. My new chords are B minor, F sharp minor, and E major. All of those chords are working. I've actually checked them all before I turn this back on. I now have a screwdriver and these little bitty screws that are used to go back into here and put the chord bar cover on. And once I do that, I will be completely justified in putting this back in the case for a while. It will need tuned. It has gone a little bit out of tune while I was sitting on my workbench and all these weather changes. But I will let that go for probably a couple days because I have a whole lot of other things that need to be done before I can get back to this. And I don't need this right away. The person that I was loaning this to, I wound up loaning him another one, and it's worked out for them. So I'm not desperate to get this done. It's going to go back in the case. I'm just tickled to have it off my workbench. I am disappointed that the store-bought chord bars that should have just made it so easy didn't work, but it gave me an opportunity to show you how to do something that's guaranteed to work, even if you make a lot of mistakes, which I've been known to do. So I hope that you get something out of this, and I hope that this presentation is helpful to you, and that you enjoy your music, and that you enjoy any time you have this moment with your family in the coming weeks and months. This is Paul Race. Have a great day.